Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Father Talks podcast. We are joined today with Kameran Alareqi. Cameron is a certified Gottman marriage counselor and host of the Married and Connected podcast. Cameron brings lived experience and tactical coaching to help couples stop fighting each other and start rebuilding marriage as the strongest team in the home. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Hey, I'm excited to have you. Listen, I have a lot of ex-married friends, a lot of relationships that have fallen apart, and I don't know if it's necessarily all due to uh just lack of communication, maybe it's lack of understanding, maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's a combination of the two. But because this is your department, I have a mountain of questions for you.
Here to answer all of them.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, what got you into this?
I had been divorced before and
Okay.
getting remarried and didn't want the second marriage to end the way the first did. And then I
Okay.
also was teaching kindergarten at the time, and I had a very distinct difference in the kids that I was teaching with
Okay.
the kids that came from homes of
Hmm.
divorce versus the kids that came from homes that were still together and thriving.
Right.
And so, yeah, wanted to change that.
Right. And that's, you know what though, I find that a lot of people, even for those people who are separated, they have not been able to separate the relationship from what's best for the kids. You know, so the kids are always in the middle. We're always going back and forth. Well, you did this at your dad's house, but you're not doing it at mine. Or well, what's okay at your mom's house ain't okay with my. We can never find common ground. For the kids. And we the kids are always stuck in the middle. They're
Mhm.
always stuck in the middle. They're always, having to decide, what if I tell my mom or my dad that I had a good time at the other parent's house, then I got to deal with the fallout from that because, the other parent's jealous or mad, that you had a good time with your other parent. So it's depressing, but I'm seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm hoping it gets a little bit better sooner versus later.
Hopefully. The thing is, what we don't realize as adults is that you're never gonna be able to separate your relationship from your kids. And the reason is because marriage is actually your children's strongest foundation in their life. What
Right.
they're learning from, so, like, boys learn from dad how to be a man, how to handle
Hmm.
stress, how to provide and protect, how to lead. Okay, they're learning all of these things. And it may not be things that you're sitting down with them saying, "Okay, son, here's how you do this," right? They're
Right.
watching you. And trust me, more is caught than taught. Okay? As a girl, if you're raising girls, they are looking at you as a man of, "This is the first man that's ever loved me, so this is what love
Hmm.
is, and I need to find a man that
Right.
will then replicate that when I get older." For, um, for girls looking at their moms, they're looking at, how do I handle things as a woman? What do I
Hmm.
accept? How do I move in this world? How do I be soft and feminine? Or do I have to carry the load? They're looking at all this. Sons are looking at their moms as what's acceptable. And, my dad treats my mom this way. Now, that carries over into separation because guess what? Your kids are still looking at that and
Right.
seeing, how does a man treat a woman? How does a woman respond to a man? How do we react? How do we handle emotional regulation? Your kids can't actually emotionally regulate themselves until they're age 10. They're looking at you for that emotional regulation. Now, if you're getting a divorce or you're getting a separation and all of that, what's happening? You're not regulated. Every time your ex or every time your spouse that you're separated with is upset, jealous, angry, whatever, your kids are taking on that energy. And
Right.
their entire identity is coming from you as their parents. So what's happening is every time you badmouth mom, you're bad mouthing part of them too. Every time mom
Right.
bad mouths dad, you're bad like she's bad mouthing them partly too. And so what's happening is you try to separate. There's this idea that when you get a divorce or you get a separation, that you're going to be able to separate the relationship from the children. That's
Right.
not true. That's not true. Every time you can't do an activity together
Mhm.
as a family because, well, you're divorced now, you're now telling the children, no, we are divorced. And therefore, you must be split in two as well. We can't do things
Uh,
together.
okay. Now, I think that's been one of my big things, as a parent. I've only been married once, but my ex, I always tried to make it a point to not talk about her to the kids, or at least in a bad way. And
Hmm.
sometimes, my girls would come to me and they would be, they have an issue with their mom, or something happened at the house and they would want to talk about it. And sometimes I wouldn't be in the right headspace to talk to them about it because I have certain feelings about certain things. And if I can't, if in the moment I couldn't be objective and give them what they needed, which was my honest perspective on something without involving my personal feelings, then I wouldn't talk to them about it. I was like, hey, this is something I don't think I can talk to you about right now. Let's kind of set this on the back burner, and
Yeah.
until I can, be a better resource for you, until I can give you the information that you need versus, just giving you the information you need, or just helping you with the situation and not allowing my personal issues or my personal feelings to get involved. And I think, for after a while, especially with my girls, they would talk to me about things and understood that, hey, my dad is gonna, if he can talk to me about the situation, he will. If he
Yeah.
can't, he's not going to.
Right.
You know. So I think, and it took me a long time to learn that, because it was things like that that were done to me where, it would be just a dad bash fest, you
Yeah.
know. And I said, you know what? And when I got married, my wife was like, listen, we're not going to do that. If that's what they do over there, fine, but we're not going to do that at our house. And it really helped a lot to have a partner in my life that was like, hey, you know what? We have to be the better people. Granted, I did not want to be the better person a lot of times because I was so mad, but I learned to that everything's about what's in the best interest of the kids.
Yeah. For sure.
So, let me see. So you say marriage is your most important team. What I mean, for people listening, what does that actually mean?
Well, the thing of it is that when we get married, and
Mhm.
I know when I first got married in my first marriage, and maybe you can relate to this. I thought, oh, well, I'm 23, so I'm old enough to get married. So I can handle this. We think we're qualified to
Right.
be in that marriage just because we're old enough to be in the marriage. And the thing is that we're not. If you're not able to emotionally regulate and have conversations versus arguments, you're not qualified. If you're not
Right.
qualified to be a team, if you're not qualified to actually hear your partner say something that may not feel that great,
Mhm.
still take it objectively and be like, you know what? They probably have a perspective that I don't. So I'm going to take that under advisement and think about it, and we'll address it later, or we'll come back to that. You're not
Mhm.
qualified to be in the marriage. So it's just like an NFL team, you know, just because you played high school football doesn't automatically qualify you to be in the NFL. Just like being in a marriage, if you haven't qualified yourself by working through your childhood traumas, learning emotional
Mhm.
regulation, learning how to be in a team, learning what a good marriage looks like, because I mean, let's face it, 60% or more of us growing up, we didn't see what a good marriage was. Just because our parents are still married doesn't mean that they had a good marriage. So
Right.
we're not qualified for that. So then what happens is, so think about this, like, you have to train your marriage just like you would if you were wanting to go into the gym and say bench press 500 pounds. You're not just going to come in and lay down on the bench and be like, all right, let's do this, right? You're going to have to act like Start where you are and add 5, 10 pounds every time you go in, rep after rep after rep. It's the same thing with your marriage. That not only do you have to be qualified for it, you also have to train for it. And the reason is that going back to what we were talking about earlier with the kids, your kids are learning from you. Your kids are learning what marriage should be, and it will be the foundation for every relationship that they have for the rest of their lives. So there's that. And also, it's also for you too. Like, you don't have, like, think about this. Nobody knows you better than your spouse when you are in that marriage. Good, bad, or
Facts.
indifferent, like, they are the person that knows you no matter what. They are the person that's going to make medical decisions for you. They are the person that's going to stand beside you when you bury a parent or, God forbid, bury a child together. They're the person that's going to be there if you had a crappy day. They're going to be there when you achieve all your dreams. They're going to be there when you finally achieve the career that you've been working so hard for or the goal that you've been training so hard for. They are your person. But if you're not training that marriage, then it falls apart. And then what happens? Somebody else comes in, somebody else, like, you end up alone. You're burying that parent without a person standing next to you. You're going through that
Exactly.
grief alone. Like, it's awful. And so a marriage, if we get married under the guise that we're ready to get married, and we don't really actually look at what that means.
Right. And, and I've seen a lot of relationships. Some of them are some phenomenal marriages. Some of them are pretty traumatizing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got friends who have been married 20 plus years, them and their significant other. I mean, you know, everybody knows sex is a big part of a relationship. I mean, they're sleeping in separate rooms, and still raising a family, but sleeping in separate rooms. Like, you guys are just roommates, you know, and how can that be? And now my wife, she comes from a big family. I come from a fairly large family. And listen, my parents weren't the overly emotional people, you know. They settled a lot of issues that they had. Very rarely did they have major arguments in front of the kids, you know. And that's something I took with me. My wife is in a similar situation where, you know, um, things had to really like spiral out of control for her parents to, actively argue in front of them. And so when we got together, that was, a lot of people were like, you guys seem like you've been together, 10, 15 years already, because we had the dynamics of our relationship was we always talked about everything,
Mhm.
you know. And that was one of the things that, I found in my parents' relationship. They had a lot of conversations. If they were in their room, you know, a lot of times they were in there talking about something that wasn't none of the kids' business, where
Yeah.
it was just, things that they needed to deal with, and they're gonna sort it out in private, not in front of us, and that's something, that I've been pretty fortunate. My wife and I have been together, 23 years, and a big portion of that is the communication,
Yeah.
is learning to communicate, learning, sometimes I've had to hear some things that I did not wanna hear,
Yeah.
hey, my approach on certain things, because for starters, as a father, listen, men aren't always taught how to regulate their emotions, how to express how they feel about certain things, and without it, especially not with it coming out as anger.
Mhm.
I could be really concerned about or really worried about some things, and I'm trying to express that to my kids, and it always sounded like I was mad, but when that
Yeah.
wasn't the case at all, you
Yeah.
know. So having a partner that could tell me, hey, maybe try this approach. Because it seems like, I understand that you're not mad, but the kids may be taking it as you being angry or upset with them. So
Mhm.
sometimes they won't come to you with certain things. They come to me because they're afraid you're gonna have a coronary
Yeah.
when, I'm not upset at all.
Yeah.
I'm just we'll say, I'm passionate about, a lot of things.
Well,
So,
because that's what's accepted as men.
yeah.
Anger is an accepted emotion. You can be angry all you want. It's not accepted for men to be scared, to be
Yes.
embarrassed, to feel resentment, to feel guilt. to feel shame because then you're vulnerable and now you're
Yes.
weak. And
Yeah.
so that you see what I'm saying? So society is putting these lies into men's head. And the reality of the situation is actually your kids need to know that you're scared. Hey,
Yes.
I'm scared that if you do that, you're going to fall and break your arm.
Yeah.
And it sounds like I'm mad at you right now. I'm not mad. I am afraid because it is my job to keep you protected. Right.
Right.
So we're explaining those things, but that takes a lot of self awareness. It takes a lot of emotional regulation. It takes a lot of tools that men are not given because you're just expected to know. And here's the other thing, think about this. For most men, especially those who play sports, men, like what happens? Your coach is always yelling at you. A,
Right.
because they're on the sideline and you can't hear, or B, because they want to win. So they're trying to drill it into you that this is what happens. So what happens is that starts from a very young age. So then you grow up thinking that if your partner, for example, is telling you something, it's a suggestion. It's an idea. It's
Mhm.
not, we need to do this until your partner starts yelling. And now you have that vasopressin that's like, oh, okay, this is no longer a suggestion. This is something we need to do. But she's already said it 11 times. And now
Right.
she's pissed because you're not actually following through and getting on it. Right. And so we don't understand these fundamental differences between men and women. So that's also an issue.
Right. All right. So let me ask you a question. And I mean,
Yeah.
this is more along the lines of parenting. Okay.
Yeah.
So as a father, no matter how many times we ask our kids to do something, kids will look at you and be like, okay, and then we'll just completely ignore you. But it's not until I start acting crazy as shit,
Hmm.
screaming and yelling, that
Hmm.
all of a sudden everybody wants to do everything that I ask them to. But it had to come like I've asked you nicely. My wife's approach is like, just keep your cool. Just, hey, have a conversation with them, ask them to do it. Then I do that. Then they completely ignore me. Okay. I have to ask them 37 times. And then the 38th time, I have to lose my shit and throw something out a window. But that's what they respond to.
Hmm.
Like, why is that a thing?
It's the same thing. So, it's the vasopressin that's
Okay.
needed, like the stress hormone that's needed, the cortisol that's needed in order to do it, but it's also because you have not, and this one's gonna hurt a little bit, but you haven't gained the authority of,
Okay.
if you don't do this on the first time that I ask, then there's going to be a natural consequence.
Right.
The natural consequence, so you've asked and asked and asked, so now you're the pushover. You're the pushover father that's like, "Meh, I don't have to do it because he's gonna ask 11 times more, and then I'll do it." Right?
Right. Now, keep in mind, I used to, this was like, you do it the F I say right now, I won't ask a second time. And my wife was like, hey, you don't have to be so aggressive. So when I stopped being aggressive, everybody just runs all over me.
Yeah.
Yeah, when
So
they were
there's a
kids.
couple of things that are happening here. Either A, they're not doing it because, like, who wants to actually do their chores? That's not a good time, right? So if I'm arguing with you or if I'm waiting for you to ask again and waiting for you to get mad, I don't have to do my chores until you get mad. So I still got some time here, right? I still got some time to put this off. Or I don't understand why this is important, right? I
Mhm.
don't understand. Oh, are we leaving in 5 minutes? Is that why you're telling me to get my shoes on? Are are we, can you not clean up the kitchen until I do the dishes? Is that why you're telling me to do that? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
there's there has to be like a cause and effect of like, okay, if I do this chore, what's in it for me? What's in it? You know what I mean? Like, why do I have to do this? So what I found is, because I'm raising boys too, what I
Okay.
found is if I get on their level and say, it is very important, those two words, very important, that
Hmm.
you do X. Now, okay, why? Because we are leaving in 5 minutes. Because I asked you to. Because I am your mother and I need some help. Because you see what I'm saying? Like, there's
Right.
always something tied to it. If you're just saying, don't do that. Okay, well, why? You know what I mean? I had this conversation with my 5-year-old yesterday. He wanted to jump off of something that was like 3 times his height. And I was
That's
like,
it.
"Don't do that." And he's like, but I said, "We do not have time for an emergency room visit today." This child wanted to, okay, but I said, "This is not a negotiation. It is my job as your mother to keep you safe. We don't have time for an emergency room visit. Don't do it. And if you do it, we will leave." So then he's like, he's my second one, right? It's
Yeah.
always the second one. So
Yeah.
he's like inching right up to the edge. And I was like, "Try it. Just see what's gonna happen." And he's like, "Okay, I won't." Because he knows that if he does, we're leaving. You don't get a second chance, bro.
That
So,
is, that is a boy thing, I'm telling you. That is a boy thing. You have to just worry about boys showering and breaking something. That's it.
yep, I know.
So, okay, and here's the next question. Marriages. Are marriages really this hard? Or are we just not trained well enough to do the things that we need to do in a marriage?
We're not trained. Marriages
Okay.
actually aren't hard. Actually, so here's the thing. A marriage should feel like the most fun sleepover with your best friend every single night.
Right.
If it doesn't, it's because you're not doing something right. Not just your partner, but you too. And you have to look at that. You have to look at that objectively and say, okay, do I not listen? Do I? So here's the top 3 things you have to have in order to make a marriage thrive. Okay. Commitment is the first one. So think of this as like load bearing walls that hold up your house.
Gotcha.
I'm going to let the dryer because that's annoying. Okay. So the load bearing walls are, first one is commitment. I can't teach you that. If you
Right.
come to me and you want coaching, you have to be committed to yourself, to growth, and to the marriage. Otherwise, like, it's not going to work. Okay. But if you're committed to your relationship and you're like, yes, I want this to work, I will do what it takes, I can teach you the rest of it. Not a big deal. Okay. The second load bearing wall is trust. Now, in most marriages, even ones that are thriving, trust has been broken. And it may not just be infidelity. We always jump to that. We always jump to like worst case scenario as human beings. It may not just be infidelity that's happened or lying or something like that. It's simple things of like, if I come to you and tell you I had a crappy day, do you always make it about you? Oh, you had a crappy day. Let me tell you about my day.
Right.
Oh, you're
Right.
tired. Let me tell you how tired I am. Like those kinds of things. Or is it, I ask you to take the trash out every Thursday night at 5 o'clock because they are coming on Friday morning to pick it up. And every Friday morning, I end up having to do it because you forgot. Trust is broken, right? Okay. So if trust is broken, your house may be a little bit lopsided.
Right.
Totally understand. And we can fix that. We can fix that, okay? But here's where people screw up. This is the number one thing that your marriage has to have in order to thrive. And it's all the difference between giving you get home after work every day and you have to give yourself a pep talk in the driveway of like, all right, just get out. It's going to be okay. We've only got 4 hours until everybody goes to bed and then I get to leave tomorrow morning. Or you go in and you are running. You are so excited. The house feels warm and welcoming and happy and all the things. Friendship. Friendship is the number one thing. When you were dating, chances
Mhm.
are you were great friends. You guys did activities together, which is how male counterparts they connect. Okay.
Right.
You asked you had open-ended conversations. What are your goals? What are your stresses? What do you like? What do you not like? Those kinds of things. That's how women connect. We stop all that once we get into actual marriage because we have this idea of like, well, I'm married now, so I don't have to ask those questions. Well, I'm married now, so like it's not like you're going to leave. Really? Is that why the divorce rate is 60% now? Like, you see
Right.
what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we stop being friends. We stop treating our partner like friends. We stop considering them like we would our best friend. We stop thinking, oh, I'm just going to grab their favorite candy bar or I'm just going to, grab this for them because they would like that. I'm going to make their day better somehow. I'm
Mhm.
going to speak to them like I would speak to my best friend. When they come to me and they have a problem, I'm going to listen like I would listen to my best friend. We take our partner for granted. We
Right.
stop treating them like a friend.
Yeah, and I'll say that, I got a buddy and he's in a similar situation. I think and him and his wife are, they don't he told me they don't even have sex anymore. And I think a large part of that is for all the reasons that you just said. That, when they were first dating, he would always reminded her, how beautiful she was and, how much he was attracted to her and so on and so forth. It was, and sometimes it just be small things. He just, I don't know, pop up and put a flower on her car or, things like that. And, they've got, kids together, and now the relationship seems just to be about bills and the kids. That's it. And I know he loves his wife, but I think he's forgotten, the person he was, so many years ago. And now they've just fallen into this routine that they're just two people living under the same roof.
They're on
You know?
autopilot.
Yeah. And I keep trying to stress to him that, like, listen, man, maybe just be the guy that you used to be. Stop asking for permission for everything and just start doing some of the things that you used to do all the time.
That's actually
You know?
what she's looking for.
Yeah.
She, yep. Because dating sets the expectation for marriage.
Okay.
So when you are doing all these things when you're dating, she's looking at him being like, "Oh, he's a leader. Oh, he takes initiative." All these things. When you're asking, "Okay, well, what do you want? Well, what do you want? Well, we'll just do whatever you want." That's not
Right.
leading. She's looking for him to be like, "Listen, I made reservations for 7:30. Wear the red dress, put your hair up, wear flats, and be in the car by 7:15." She is looking for that for the love of God. She's looking for him to be like, "Take some initiative, man.
Right. Take
Lead
charge. Okay.
lead me. And when you lead me, I better be able to go with you blindfolded and hold your hand. And wherever I end up, take that blindfold off. And I like where I'm at." And
Right.
that's in everything. Finances. Lead our family. No, we're not buying the $30 toy because that is not in the budget because we have a family trip coming up that we're trying to save for. No, we're not spending $1,000 on groceries this month because, we got big plans. Men see big picture. Women
Right.
see details. When you walk into a brand new home, a man's looking at it like that's not structurally sound. That's going to have to be fixed in the next 5 years. That's going to need to be done. That's not level, right? He's looking at the Christmas tree is going to go there and the blinds are going to go there. And oh, that paint color has got to go. Like this,
Right.
she does not care if the cabinet is level until all the water starts pooling at the back and she's got to clean up the rings of that,
Right.
right? That's the kind of stuff. We're on two different levels. Men are
That is
macro,
so funny.
women are micro. So
Yeah.
this is also about accepting influence, right? So
Okay.
when she's saying, "Well, this is a problem and this is a problem," and he's looking at like, "That's not a problem. That's not that big of a deal. We're not worried about it." Well, no, she is worried about it, actually. So yes, men need to be leaders. Women want to be led, but we want to trust that where you're leading us is not going to be off a cliff.
Right.
There's that. But we also need to take each other's influence because what you're bringing to the table as a man and what she's bringing to the table as a woman, two completely different things. And it's what creates that balance in the relationship. I am not great at math. Do not, do you, if there's numbers involved, I might be having a conversation with you, but I am faking it. Okay. You are on your own, friend.
Right.
If there's words involved, do not ask my husband. He
Yes.
he is also faking it. And you are on your own, okay? So there's that balance. But that also means I'm not great with money. Like I just swipe the card. If there's money in the account, great. If there's not money in the account, we got some problem. It's
Right.
his job to make sure there's money in the account, right? So all of that. But at the same time, I don't know that that man's ever cleaned a toilet. So, and that's fine. Like those are our balance, right? He has no idea what size our children are in terms of clothing. It's fine. You see what I'm saying? So that's why your marriage is a team. Everybody brings things to the table that the other one doesn't. But that is what his wife is looking for. His wife is looking for him to be the man that she chose because now he's not. Men get married hoping the woman will not change.
Yes.
Women get married hoping the man will change, but for the better.
Okay. Wow. That's that's an insane way to look at it.
And it's true, unfortunately. And everybody's going to change, and maybe not in the best way.
Yeah, and yeah, I can say that we've, even in my own marriage, we've both changed and whatnot. I've I've made it a point to become a better listener. I've made it a point, and granted, a lot of this has been through like even through podcasting and whatnot. I've talked to so many different people that, I've learned some things that, perspectives that I hadn't originally considered, you know.
Mhm.
But at the same time, my wife understands there's just certain things I'm just not gonna fucking do. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and she understands that. So like, I'm never gonna be the husband that she says, "Hey, you know what? We should go get a facial." That's never gonna happen.
No.
That's never gonna happen. I will always be the guy who come you know what? You need him to carry all the groceries in. You need me to look at your engine, fix something, carry heavy shit. That's the guy I'm always gonna be, you know, all the time. But I'm never gonna be the guy who, is gonna carry your purse. I'm not gonna look through your purse. I don't care if there is a life-saving serum in your purse. If it requires me to go in there, it's not gonna happen. So, and she understands that. Listen, I'm the resident chef. I'm the resident guy who fixes things in the house, all that stuff. If the kids step out of line with my wife, they know they have to deal with me. You know, those are the things that I will absolutely do 120% of the time. I'll even occasionally sit down and watch a Lifetime movie with you, you know, but that won't be the norm. You know, so we don't have any traditional like gender roles in our house. If my wife decides tomorrow she wants to cut the grass, hey, knock yourself out. If she decides for the next 6 months she don't want to be bothered with the grass or the trash, guess what? Somebody else will do it. You know, but that's just how things work in our house. You know, my wife is, I won't lie, she probably runs like 85%, 90% of the household, you know, up until, I don't want to do something, but we have an understanding that, hey, listen, I get my way most of the time. So when you don't want to do something, there's not going to be an argument about it because you know what? Prior to this, the last 9 things I wanted, you know what? It was my way. So on the
Mhm.
10th thing, we're not going to argue about it because I had my way. So, that works for us. Now, that's not the case for everybody, but it does work for us.
That's good.
So,
And that's what you have to figure out. You have to figure out that balance.
yeah. So, young couples. Okay, so my son right now, he they've been married 4 years now. So, one son's been married 4 years, the other one's been married 3. 2. He's actually been married 2. And my biggest thing for my middle son is for him to stop taking his wife's independence from her
Mm.
because he wants, and listen, I understand, that he just wants to be a good husband. He wants to make sure that she's not stressed and she just has everything that she wants. But I'm like, buddy, what happens when she needs to make a decision on her own? She will be so dependent on you to help her with everything that she can't do any of the things that, a woman should be able to do on her own, you know? And he's like, well, I just don't want her, stressing. I mean, look at all the stuff you do for mom. I was like, yes, but these are options. It's not just I've taken her decisions from her. Is that if she doesn't want to do something, then I'll do it. I don't make that decision for her. She's like, nah, I don't want to. You can do it. I'm like, all right, cool. He is taking her independence, whereas, like for and again, maybe it's different for for other people, but I love an independent woman who where my help is an option. It's not, her only choice. It's just something, she chose to do. She chose to say, "Hey, honey, can you help me with this?" She could do it, but she's asking me for help.
Mhm.
And that's what I want to teach him is that let it be an option. And a lot of these young guys, also like I don't how do we help young men stop with the pillow talk even? promising things that, you can't you can't provide. So now when you're in a marriage, things don't work out because you can't provide any of the things that you were saying.
Yeah, so a lot of that, it comes down to integrity,
Okay.
and also motive.
Okay.
Teaching them to always check their motive, because if his motive is like, let's take, well, we'll kinda go backwards here, but if you're promising things that you can't provide, that's breaking trust. Because
Right.
she's okay, he's going to do X, Y, and Z. And then when he doesn't deliver, he has now let her down. So now she
Mhm.
feels betrayed, rejected, all the things. And that's just a layer of resentment that's going to get laid. And guess what?
Okay.
Even though this is the biggest thing that young people need to understand, and probably old people too.
Yeah.
Your intention can be absolute gold. The impact that you make with that intention means more. So,
Okay.
for here's an example for you, okay? If I am running through the airport trying to catch a flight and I run over your foot with my 50-pound bag, right? I didn't mean to run over your bag. And this is also when you're apologizing, you're like, "Well, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to." Guess what? Nobody gives a diddly squat whether you meant to or not. My
Right.
foot still hurts. Okay. So the impact is you ran over my foot. Now maybe my foot's broken. Okay. You have hurt me in some way, shape, or form. So now you have to repair the impact, not the intention.
Uh, got you.
That's
Okay.
huge. You
Okay.
have to repair the impact, not the intention. Okay. So when you promise things that you can't deliver on, you've now betrayed her. So she's looking at you as, he's not the man that I wanted. He's not the man that I chose, because now he's not able to, I can't trust him. So if I want this thing, I'm going to have to go do it myself. Now you've inverted the polarity. So now she's in her masculine. She can't be soft. She can't give you sex. She can't be trusting and kind and compassionate. She can be, but she's not going to be, because now
Mm.
she doesn't trust you.
Okay.
So that
See,
is either going to end
uh,
up like two alpha males fighting, or
right.
it's going to end up him being in his wounded feminine of just give me, just receive. And now she's going to leave because she's tired of dealing with a snowflake.
Right. Okay. And this is something I've heard, with a few other guests, especially about women having to transition between masculine and feminine. A woman who always has to be in her masculine energy will never, really give herself to her partner because
Correct.
she doesn't trust you to lead, or she doesn't trust you with, you know, to do the things that you say you're gonna do. She's always the person, like even we even take it a step further. So it's acceptable for some women to have a man who cries, but it's when he completely falls apart
It's
is
a problem.
when it's harder for them to accept that man, for sharing his emotions.
Yes.
Yeah. So and that's something I am I'm struggling with because people want a man who can be emotional, but you only get this small window to have that emotion and nothing outside of that. Whereas, that in itself makes most of us say, you know what, I'm just not even going to take any chances and share those emotions because I don't want to be too emotional.
Think about this like a little kid. Okay.
Okay. Excuse me.
If a child, if a small child is
Mhm.
told, no, you can't have that toy, right? It's okay if they're mad. It's okay if they're upset. I would even expect you to be mad or upset because you're not getting what you want. Totally get it, right? Now, if you're throwing yourself on the floor and you are kicking and screaming and you're swiping your hand and knocking all the toys off of the shelf, now we've crossed a line.
Right.
Now we're leaving the store. or you're getting a spanking, the case is. Okay? It's the same thing with a spouse, all right?
That's fair.
You cannot be fully loved unless you're fully known. You cannot be
Gotcha.
fully known unless you're vulnerable. Okay? So sharing that vulnerability, having humility, those are the two sexiest attributes that you can have as a spouse.
Okay.
Vulnerability and humility. Okay? Here's the difference. If you are going through a grief process, if you're upset, if you really are angry, you lost your job, whatever, you're fearful, sharing those things, great. I want to be there for you because that is part of that friendship that we talked about. You are letting me into your world. Okay. Now we can build a love map with that. That's what Dr. John Gottman calls it, as love maps. You're letting each other into your world. We're friends. We can be teammates that way. Now, if you are refusing to get out of bed every day because you are so depressed and woe is me, if you are always the victim and you cannot take accountability, if you're slamming doors and throwing things because you're mad, or you're punching holes in the wall, or you're, just boo-hooing so bad you just cannot get it together, and
Right.
I'm now having to take on your workload because you are emotionally belligerent or you're just basically drunk on emotion. Now we got a problem, right?
Okay. I mean,
So it's
and that
not
makes more sense.
necessarily a small window.
Right.
It's how do you handle yourself, right? Is there a reason that you're so upset, or are you just being a jackwagon?
Yeah.
Now we got an issue. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. And that makes that explanation makes it more sense, much more sense. Okay. So let's follow it up with, what are the top 3 things missing from most marriages today?
Okay, so friendship is the first one for sure.
Okay.
I would say transparency
Okay.
versus honesty. And the difference there is if I ask you, hey, did you go out to dinner with the guys last night?
Mhm.
And you say, yep. And then later I have to ask you, oh, and was your secretary there? Who maybe there's been some issues or some inappropriate conversations with? And
Roger.
now, like, I had to drag that information out from you. That's honesty. Transparency is you tell me the information that I need to know before I even have to ask. Okay. Hey, babe, just letting you know, I did go out to dinner tonight and Sarah showed up. I did not know she was coming. Nothing
Yes.
happened. She sat on the opposite end of the table with 5 guys in between us. Just wanted you to know that she was there before you found out from somebody else. That's transparency.
Right, and that for me, that's completely acceptable. It's not anything, we're not asking anything, ridiculous. And I think a lot of men, though, too, forget that when there's been an issue in our marriages and we want things to work out, we have to accept the fact that there are gonna be some hurdles that we have to overcome to get back in. I mean, it's bottom line, you wanna get back into good graces, you kinda have to, bend over backwards because you're the one who screwed up, you know? So you have, and I get it, it can't be something that's thrown in your face every single time, but you have to be making an honest effort to make changes, and you have to show that, "Hey, this is this was a mistake on my part. It will not happen again, and this is the length I'm going willing to go to prove that." You know?
If something's being thrown in your face repeatedly, one of
Yeah.
two things is happening. Either
Okay.
A, the situation, whatever keeps coming to the surface is because there's still hurt there. Okay. So one of two things is happening. Either A, you didn't repair well. So you just said, sorry, what do you want me to do? Or
Right.
sorry, what are we having for dinner? Right? There was not an actual, I'm sorry for doing this. I know it impacted you in this way. Here's what I'll do in the future. Will you forgive me? There was not
Right.
a five-finger apology with that. Okay, that's first. Or B, There's resentment there. And here's the deal. And this is going to suck for some of your listeners to listen to that have over, like, they're really, here's the deal. Divorce happens because of hardness of heart. Okay.
Okay.
Period, point blank, the end. Like, I have quit on you because my heart is hard towards you. That's the only reason. All right. Irreconcilable differences, not really a thing. It's hardness of heart. All right. So here's the deal. That hardness of heart comes because of resentment. Resentment comes because we have expectations of people that sadly are the majority of the time unspoken. Well, I
Mm,
thought that you would be like this. Well, I thought that we would have this type of life. Well, I thought that we would handle this situation like we did, or like I wanted, but it didn't get that way.
mhm,
The thing about expectations is expectations are like a ladder. You're at the top, your partner is at the bottom.
mhm,
They can only climb the ladder as far as you've communicated. Here's the difference. Okay. I need the trash taken out. Cool. I'll do it when I get a chance. That might be next Thursday. Okay. Versus, hey, babe, on your way out the door in the morning, can you take the trash out? Today, tomorrow is trash day. And also there's some raw chicken in there that really stinks. Now you hear the difference in communication. Now
right,
you know there's a time limit, there's a reason, and that's on me. There's a
right,
responsibility there, right? We
right,
don't communicate that well. So we have these expectations of people that either A, we're not willing to meet ourselves, B, we're not willing to communicate. Now we're expecting our partner to be a mind reader, or C, we expect them to do it like we would do it, but they don't have the same experiences, education, or exposures that we have. So they're going to do it completely different than the way we would. And
right,
now we're
and s
mad for what? Because now we're judging them.
right, and that is so funny because we just had this conversation. We were sitting around, dinner. We had a big family dinner, and we were talking about something almost exactly like that, because sometimes my wife will redo something I did,
Mhm.
not because it's wrong, it's just not the way she would do it,
Mhm.
you know? And it's funny now because, it's not anything serious. Like, back in the day, we would try to do projects together, and we just could not do projects together because I had a way of approaching things and she had her own way of doing things. Now, we've been together a while, we just accept that way each other's unique approach to things. And that's something we know, like we discussed with our kids too. It's like, hey, if it can't always be your way, you have to give a little, you know, and be open to trying something different. And I think more couples need to understand that if you're in a marriage with somebody who's, let's say, I don't know, they did a lot of home improvement projects with their parents, versus somebody who never did any of that stuff. You can't come into that relationship expecting them to do all the same things that you did. You want them to, we want to gradually introduce them to those things. We want to learn together. And that's something that for me that I just had to learn my wife's, the why she did certain things the way she did it, you know, and she had to accept the way, whether that for me, I'm a military kid, so we didn't do a lot of home projects because we lived in military housing. But when I started doing things on my own, she just had to respect that, hey, you know what? This is his process. I'm gonna let you be. It's not the way I would do it, but I'm gonna let you be. And now through that, we've just gotten to a point where, we take each other's suggestions and it's like, hey, all right, we can do this your way, we'll do this part my way and see how that works. So far, so good. We've got a garden and whatnot. Everything's still alive. So deck project is all mine. She doesn't want to be bothered with that. Cool.
That
But
also goes back to what you want to teach your son of checking your motive. Like, if
yes,
your motive in that is to control or manipulate,
yeah,
now we got a problem, right?
yeah,
So if he's taking away her abilities or her decision making, he is controlling her.
yeah.
And
She
it's
does it
that's with the intention, but that is the
right,
end.
right,
If
and that's
if
one of
your
the things I
wife's
keep telling
redoing
myself.
things, yeah, if your wife's redoing things that you did, now she's controlling versus just letting it be.
Yeah, and he's we've all we've all taken some time to, to learn,
Yeah.
and again, like I said, through a lot of stuff, podcasting and that, I've learned a lot of things that I did not know about my approach to my marriage, my relationship with, even my kids. You know, I have learned to broaden my perspective on things even. Okay, well, you know what? Just because the way I was raised doesn't mean I have to instill all these same things in everybody else, because there's certain things that I didn't like the way that I was brought up. Or, there are certain things that as a young husband that I totally screwed up. But what I didn't do is not accept that I needed to change those things if I wanted to stay married.
Mhm.
Because in my book, I was only gonna get married once, and once if it didn't work out, I was never getting married again. And, fortunately, through conversations like this, and people, talking with people with much more experience, I've learned that it's gotta be some give and take. It's gotta be, "Hey, I didn't hear what you originally said, but you know what? I'm listening now. Please explain it to me." Like you were just talking about the trash. Two ways of explaining the trash. One puts no priority on it, it get to it when you get to it. But
Yeah.
the explanation says, "You know what? There's a sense of urgency there. I
Mhm.
need you to get it done for this reason." And now I understand why it needs to get done right now, or when I walk out of the house in the morning. And I
Exactly.
think that failure to communicate is why, or at least maybe it is being communicated, and sometimes we're just not listening
Mhm.
to what's being articulated to us.
Mhm.
And I can say that wholeheartedly as men, sometimes we don't listen. We don't hear the urgency, in some things because I don't know, maybe we just got home or whatever have you, you know, and through conversations like this, I want more listeners, more men, and more people in general. You know what? I, I love marriage. I want to see fewer people get divorced, but we have to start, you know, taking each other, take into account not just our feelings, our significant others. If we make mistakes, we need, I understand, like you mentioned with what your intention was, you know,
Mhm.
yes, we understand that was, this was not your intention to injure somebody, but you did. So, instead of coming off with, damn, man, shit, it was just an accident. Sorry. You know,
Yeah.
it's the wrong approach
Right.
because you injured somebody, you know, and we need to see more we need to have more open conversations, with people like you or, with people, less people with conversations, not with people who've been divorced 13 times, giving out marriage advice.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
um,
Exactly. Divorce is actually it's actually yes. So if you are directly friends with
mhm,
someone that has been divorced, you have I think it's like a 60% chance of getting a divorce. But not only so if they are friends with people that have been divorced, just because like friend of a friend kind of thing, you have a
mhm.
33% chance of getting a divorce.
Wow.
But if you hang out with them. So here's the thing is like what we don't realize is your marriage is one of the most like we talked about earlier, it's one of the most important relationships you will have.
Right.
And so because of that, you have to protect it. And a lot of people are not willing to do that. A lot of people are like, well, they're living on autopilot like we talked about earlier. The problem with that is if you're not protecting your marriage, it's pride. Well, I don't have anything wrong with me. You're the one that's got the problem. Pride, right? Like, and that's what it is. We are so prideful of no, I'm so stuck in my ways. If you say things like, well, that's just the way I am, that's pride. You're not willing to grow. And that's the whole that is one of the things that I want people to understand is that society has it backwards. Society touts that marriage is for happiness. It's not.
Yes.
It is for growth. Marriage is the one relationship that you will have that will hold up a mirror to your face and say, "This is what still needs to be worked on." And
Okay.
that is what you that instead of getting mad at your partner and being like, "Well, I don't do that." Pretty sure you do, because otherwise it wouldn't be coming to the surface. When they trigger you, thank them. Thank you, darling. I will work on that. Instead of protecting your ego and getting defensive and, getting mad about it.
I will say that statement right there is something we probably all need to work on.
Everybody.
Because I mean, as a man, and then you know what? Maybe it's the delivery sometimes. It's how you
Sure.
deliver it's how you deliver a statement like that. So if you come out of left field and make a statement like that, most people are gonna get mad. And, men I don't know a single man who is gonna, just be like, "Oh, okay, I'll take that under advisement." No, it's definitely the delivery. And I will even say, like, when I've talked to my kids sometimes, they've come to me to talk to me about certain things, but it's how they deliver certain information that will set the tone for the conversation. So and my wife, same thing. If you come into a conversation, 90 miles an hour, you're probably not going to get the result
Oh,
from me.
yeah. Yeah.
You're just not, because one, I'm I instantly got on the defensive because of how you made a statement, or just your whole attitude towards me. I've already had a bad day, and then you come at me with this. Now it's going to turn into an argument. It's absolutely going to turn into an argument. But if the first words out of your mouth are like, "Listen, I'm not trying to argue, but I do need you to hear something," I've instantly turned off any urge to be defensive, because you've already said at the onset, "Hey, I need to talk to you. I'm not trying to argue." So I already know that, hey, this is something important to you, and this is not about you trying to prove a point. It's just something you need to get off your chest, and I need to be attentive. You know.
So here's something for your listeners. Here's a
Okay.
statistic, and here's a tool that I give my clients, okay? 90% of the conversations that you have will end the exact same way that they started. Okay. So if
Okay.
you come in and you are coming in hot, that conversation is going to end in an argument.
Right.
But, and here's your tool. Okay, ladies, we always hear and we get so mad about this of like, you need to make him a sandwich. Well, you do when you are bringing something to his attention. Okay. Every single person in this world is just a small person in a big body. Okay.
Right.
So here's how we need to do it. And this is what men need to be able to listen and with not just hear the words, but hear the message underneath what we're saying and
Okay.
also react a little bit quicker in terms like if we're asking about something. Okay. Women need to work on the delivery. And I know for me, this was a really big thing too, but we're going to make him a sandwich. You're going to go to
Okay.
him, and the bread of your sandwich is going to be positive statements. The meat and the cheese and all the things the fixins that you put on your sandwich, that's the thing that needs addressed. Okay.
Okay.
So you go to him and you say, "Hey, baby, I love you so much, and I do not want to. I'm not trying to argue because you are such a great husband in these 3 areas. Okay. I need you to work on listening better. I need you to work on putting your phone down when I talk, because when you don't do that, here's how I feel about that. And this is what it makes me think. Okay. But again, I just want you to know I love you so much and you're such a wonderful person, but it would really help me out if you could do that one thing."
Okay. Well, you got me at those first couple statements. Okay.
Exactly.
But hey,
Exactly.
I
When
was
you
cool. I
make
was
the
cool with whatever you had to say
sandwich,
after that. I was cool with whatever you had to say after that. You know.
exactly. But women aren't like that. You never
Yeah.
listen. You suck. You need to
Yeah.
like fun fact, friend, you're getting nowhere. Like he has now looked at you and been like, and guess what? I'm not gonna do it for another 3 weeks just because you said it like that.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, listen, my wife can get me to do some of most anything, things that I mean, I hate doing, you know, but when it's her approach. When she approaches it the right way, I'm like, oh, fine, okay.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I mean, most of the time I can't
Just
tell her no.
because she asks that way.
Yeah. You know,
90% of conversations start the way that they end
yeah,
or end the way that they started.
right. Well, okay. So I got a couple more questions for you. So What is what is one marriage truth people do not want to hear but need to hear?
Every marriage has an insane amount of hypocrisy.
Okay.
What I
Hmm.
mean by that is that 9 times out of 10, if you're like, when you have some kind of a issue with your partner, you
Okay.
need first, before you bring it to their attention, stop and ask yourself, how am I doing the exact same thing? If you this is every couple that I come to that comes to me has so much hypocrisy and it looks a little bit different. So one is Rocky Road, one is mint chocolate chip, both ice cream. Okay.
Right.
So what will happen is it's things like they'll say like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but basically what will happen is you don't communicate very well. Okay. Well, what she means is maybe he doesn't listen well or he doesn't respond in a timely manner. Okay.
Gotcha.
But then on her side, she's already had half the conversation in her head before she brings him into it. Well, you don't communicate well either, sis. You see what I'm saying? So, like, both of those things happen. Or here's the other thing. Okay. So she'll, like, one of them will say something like, well, you just don't care. Or nothing I do is ever good enough for you. Okay. But then he criticizes every time she overcooks the noodles or puts the towels on the couch to be folded instead of folding them in the laundry room. You see what I'm saying? So like there's there's criticism or there's, contempt or just little things. There is hypocrisy on both sides, but we don't have the self-awareness to look at ourselves first because it's easier to
Right.
blame than it is to take accountability.
Really. Outstanding. Okay. For those people who might need some marriage counseling, some advice, how do they get a hold of you?
So the first thing that they need to understand is that I am wildly different than a therapist. So for my program, takes 7 months to get. So you're not going to be on my couch for, the next 4 years. It's fast and furious and intense, but it works. And you get support between sessions. So for that, it's an always forward mentality. So when you have an argument, we're working on the argument that night and what happens so that in your session the next time we can move forward and get more tools. Okay. So there's that. If they're interested, my website is www.recognizingpotential.com.
Okay.
They can find me on pretty much all social platforms. I have a TikTok account. I don't really use it. So Instagram, Facebook, Substack, those are the three that you can find me on the most at married and connected. At married.and.connected. And then I also have a book that is on Amazon and it's called Connected to Me, the Blueprint. It's very short, but it's over 280 journal prompts that and you don't have, you're not a journaler. That's okay. You can totally just use these questions to ponder and be like, oh, okay. And think about to develop some more self awareness in 8 different areas of your life so that you can come to the table more objectively.
Outstanding. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Cameron Alareqi. Hey, Cameron, listen, thank you so much. I will put all your contact information up on the website as it as I post it and everything. Excuse me, brain fart. Listen, I got a little
Okay.
ADD and something flashed by my office door. I'm like, oh, what
Totally
was
get it.
that?
Totally get it.
But yeah, so listen, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Oh man, I hate to admit it, but I've learned some more stuff that maybe I need to put into
Yeah.
practice. But I definitely want to make sure that I continue to share stuff like this because you know as a man we struggle enough with dealing with our emotions personally, and then expressing it to our partner. You know, I want us to have every tool we can to be better fathers, better husbands, just better people in general. And you've added to that today, so thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. And if people want even
Absolutely.
more tools, they can find me on my podcast, Married and Connected, every Monday. So,
Every Monday. Hey, so
yeah,
guys, every Monday. So Married and Connected every Monday. Miss Cameron Alareqi, thank you so much for being on the show.
thanks for having me.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.